Okay, let's kick off this explainer by looking at a totally bizarre paradox, one that completely flips our modern understanding of success right on its head. I'm talking about the miserable millionaire. We often look at people with massive wealth and just assume they have it all figured out, completely blind to the silent anxiety and endless craving that might be eating them alive behind closed doors.
Look, society beats it into our heads through literally every ad and algorithm that more money and higher status is the absolute key to happiness. But just look at the stark contrast here. If we're really being honest with ourselves, we all know wealthy people who are incredibly miserable. And on the flip side, we probably know people with very little who live these deeply fulfilled, happy lives with unshakable peace. So what exactly is the disconnect here?
Well, the ancient Stoics recognized this exact trap over 2,000 years ago. They understood that a bank balance is a shockingly poor indicator of actual wealth. Take the Stoic philosopher Epictetus. He actually started his life as an enslaved person, so he understood this perfectly. He once warned a student against taking this super lucrative job offered by Emperor Augustus. The student argued, hey, I'm going to make a ton of money, get famous, and even get to wear a gold crown. But Epictetus pointed out that the fame and that gold crown demanded way too much work and sacrifice for very little actual return. I mean, think about how crazy this is. Sure, you get a gold crown, but you'll just be wearing it at your funeral.
So let me ask you this directly, and honestly, keep this in mind throughout this entire explainer. What actually decides whether a sum of money is good for you? Because the money itself certainly isn't going to tell you. It doesn't hand you a neatly typed list of all the late nights, the stress, the lost weekends, or the huge moral compromises you're going to have to make in exchange for it.
Which brings us to our first main concept, the sickness of accumulation. If you don't grasp the true nature of wealth, blindly chasing it won't just leave you empty, it will literally make you sick. The great Stoic philosopher Seneca pointed out that millionaires are often some of the poorest people around. Why? Because their money has essentially stolen their lives. Think about these hidden costs. Wealth often makes people totally obsess over public opinion. It strips away control over their own schedules, tying them down to boardrooms and obligations. And honestly, worst of all, it surrounds them with sycophants, fake friends, and grifters.
Seneca summed this up brilliantly. He said, "These individuals have riches just as we say that we have a fever, when really the fever has us." It's such a powerful image, right? It shows how wealth acts exactly like a disease, taking complete control over its host. The person thinks they possess the money, but in reality, the money absolutely possesses them.
And this leads us straight into a psychological trap known as the hedonic treadmill. It's this universal human battle. No matter the number in your bank account, your brain's desire for more is incredibly hard to shut off. Money rarely ever gives us a sense of enough. You think a certain amount is enough, right? Then you hit it. Suddenly, you need double that, then triple. It's this endless loop that forces even billionaires to check the Forbes list every year and jealously glare at the names ranked above them. It's wild.
So, how on earth do we step off this treadmill? Well, the Stoics left us a super practical playbook for true wealth. It breaks down into 3 simple steps. Step 1, define what wealth means to you. Step 2, know what enough is. And step 3, practice poverty. Let's break these down.
Starting with step 1, define what wealth means to you.
We are constantly bombarded with flashy images of success. Mansions, yachts, sports cars. But a genuinely rich life means something entirely different to everyone. I found this fascinating. Best-selling financial author Ramit Sethi notes a perfect example of this. He has a friend in a small New York apartment whose ultimate rich life is spending the equivalent of a monthly cable bill to have fresh, gorgeous artisanal flowers delivered constantly. That makes her feel incredibly wealthy. Ramit, on the other hand, couldn't care less about flowers. For him, his personal definition of wealth is literally never having to step foot inside a hardware store ever again. 2 totally different definitions of wealth, both completely valid, because they're personal.
This is where you actually have to take action. You've got to stop blindly chasing the default path society lays out for you. Write down exactly what makes you feel wealthy. Because if you don't define your own rich life, believe me, marketers, advertisers, and social media algorithms will be more than happy to define it for you, and they will charge you a fortune for the privilege.
Moving right along to step 2, know what enough is.
Seneca taught that being poor doesn't mean having too little, it means wanting more than you have. So true wealth absolutely requires a stopping point. It requires this concept of enough. To really grasp this, there's this amazing story about the famous authors Kurt Vonnegut and Joseph Heller. They were hanging out at this lavish party in New York City, hosted by a billionaire.
Vonnegut teased Heller, pointing out that their host had likely made more money just yesterday than Heller's massively successful novel Catch-22 had ever earned in its entire history.
Heller's reply, just profound. We should all remember this. He simply said, I've got something he can never have, the knowledge that I've got enough. That right there is the ultimate flex of a truly wealthy person. Living in a state of fullness, rather than the state of constant, restless craving, means you've attained the one thing that never falls to the rich man's lot, a stopping point.
Which brings us to step 3. Practice poverty.
This is probably the hardest part of the playbook. Look, if you are terrified of losing your money owns you. You're just its servant. That's exactly why Seneca advised deliberately setting aside a few days to eat the cheapest food, wear rough clothes, and intentionally experience the condition you fear so much. When facing severe financial ruin, Benjamin Franklin actually channeled his inner Seneca to test this. He was offered a highly lucrative job to publish some really defamatory stuff. To see if he should take the money just out of fear, on day 1 he ate only bread and water. Day 2, he slept on the hard floor. And by day 3, he realized he felt no inconvenience at all. He proved to himself that he didn't need to accept dirty money out of a fear of poverty.
So, apply this to yourself. Think about your own life right now. Are you just a highly paid hostage? How many toxic people, terrible situations, or miserable jobs have you put up with just to maintain a comfortable substance? If your paycheck forces you to do things you know aren't right or traps you in misery, you aren't actually wealthy. You're literally just a highly paid hostage. And what's fascinating is that this isn't just ancient history. Even today, elite performers use this exact Stoic trick to drastically improve their decision-making. Author Tim Ferriss fasts for 3 days every month to expose himself to real hunger. He talks about a wealthy CEO friend who spends a week every quarter sleeping in a sleeping bag on the floor, surviving entirely on instant oatmeal. They do this to conquer fear. By constantly reminding themselves that they can thrive on very little, they stop making life and business decisions driven by a fear of losing their comfort.
When you master all these steps, you reach the ultimate prize, freedom.
The end goal here isn't a mountain of gold. It's freedom. It's the freedom to decide what you do most days, the freedom to do what you think is right, and critically, the power to walk away from any situation that makes you miserable. You only unlock this unshakable peace when you realize that true wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. Mastering your desires and defining your own parameters for a good life, that is infinitely more valuable than just infinitely increasing the size of your bank account.
Before we wrap up this explainer, I want you to grab a piece of paper and answer this. What is your personal definition of a rich life? It's time to take back control. Because until you define what enough is, you aren't really building a wealthy life. You're just building a very expensive prison.
So are you ready to figure out your number?